In 1200 BC, a scribe in the city of Ugarit was halfway through writing a letter begging for military help. He never finished it. The city burned before he could. That letter still exists. And here is the question it raises. Who taught the people who destroyed him how to fight like that? This matters because Ugarit was not a small town. It was the beating heart of Bronze Age trade, a city where merchants from Egypt, Cyprus, the Aegean, and Mesopotamia all met. If Ugarit could fall, the entire network could fall. And that is exactly what happened. Everywhere, simultaneously. Here is the thing most history books skip. This was not a slow decline. Archaeologists expected to find generations of decay. Instead, they found destruction layers, thick bands of ash and burned debris that date to the same 50-year window, not centuries. 50 years, one human lifetime. The list of what collapsed reads like a roll call of the ancient world's greatest powers. The Hittite Empire, gone. Mycenaean Greece, gone. The kingdoms of Cyprus, gone. The Canaanite city-states, gone. The Egyptian New Kingdom survived, but barely, and it never recovered its former strength. The Hittites are especially disturbing to think about. At their peak, they controlled most of Anatolia and Syria. They had iron weapons when everyone else had bronze. They had fought Ramesses II, the most powerful pharaoh alive, to a standstill at Kadesh. Then they simply ceased to exist. No successor state, nothing. In Egypt, Ramesses III left us a detailed account of what he called the Sea Peoples. He says they came from the sea in ships, a vast coalition of different groups, burning cities as they moved. He claims he defeated them, but the Egypt that survived his victory was a shadow of what came before. The Sea Peoples are described as ferocious, organized, and inexorable. They brought their families with them in ox carts. This was not a raid. This was a migration of an entire people who had nowhere left to go. Which means somewhere before they appeared, something had already destroyed their home. Here is where everything you just learned gets more complicated. In 1984, archaeologist Robert Drews published a devastating argument. The Sea Peoples did not cause the collapse. They were refugees from it. The civilizations that were burning, they were the Sea Peoples' civilizations too. The invaders were the survivors. So if the Sea Peoples were victims running from the same catastrophe, then what caused the catastrophe? Researchers have proposed 4 main culprits: earthquakes, drought, internal rebellion, and systems collapse. The idea that Bronze Age civilization had become so interdependent that one failure cascaded into all the others. The earthquake theory has real teeth. Amos Noor, a Stanford geophysicist, documented a chain of massive earthquakes that hit the eastern Mediterranean around 1200 BC. Mycenae, Tiryns, Megiddo, Ugarit all show seismic destruction evidence. But earthquakes don't explain why the civilizations that survived the quakes still collapsed afterwards. The drought theory is arguably the strongest physical evidence we have. A 2010 study analyzed fossilized pollen from lake sediments in Cyprus and Turkey. The results showed a severe, prolonged drought beginning around 1200 BC. Grain shipments recorded in Linear B tablets drop sharply. Then the tablets stop entirely. The scribes ran out of food before they ran out of clay. Linear B is worth pausing on. It was the writing system of Mycenaean Greece. When Mycenae collapsed, the Greeks did not switch to a simpler script. They forgot how to write entirely. For 400 years, the Greek world was illiterate. When writing returned, they had to borrow a completely new alphabet from the Phoenicians. That 400-year gap in Greek literacy is called the Greek Dark Ages, and the word dark is not metaphorical. Population levels collapsed. Settlements shrank from cities to tiny villages. Long-distance trade effectively ceased. The artistic and architectural techniques of Mycenaean civilization had to be entirely reinvented from scratch centuries later. And here is a detail that makes the system's collapse theory hard to dismiss. Bronze requires tin. In the ancient world, there were almost no local tin deposits in the eastern Mediterranean. The tin came from Afghanistan, from Cornwall in Britain, from Turkey, shipped along routes spanning thousands of miles. Cut those routes. No bronze, no weapons, no tools, no civilization. But now consider this. Archaeologist Eric Klein spent years documenting Bronze Age trade complexity. His conclusion is deeply unsettling. The late Bronze Age system was more interconnected than medieval Europe. More interconnected, he argues, than the early modern world. And we are watching something structurally identical in the 21st century right now, today. Klein's book is called 1177 BC. In it, he argues no single cause explains the collapse. It was a perfect storm. Drought stressing food supplies, earthquakes destroying key cities, migrations destabilizing borders, all hitting a system already stretched to its absolute limit. One thread pulled, then everything unraveled. The internal rebellion theory adds another layer. Some sites show not just destruction, but deliberate systematic destruction. Palatial storerooms emptied before burning, luxury goods smashed rather than looted. That is not an invading army taking plunder. That looks like people destroying the symbols of the system that starved them. The people at the bottom of Bronze Age society had every reason to burn it down. These were palace economies, highly centralized, with elites controlling all grain, all metals, all trade. When drought hit and the palaces stopped distributing food, the population didn't wait to starve. The archaeological record suggests they acted. There is a letter found at Ugarit that is almost unbearable to read. It is from the king of Alashia, ancient Cyprus, to the king of Ugarit. It says, "7 ships of the enemy have come and done much damage. Now if there are more enemy ships, send me a report." There was no reply. Ugarit was already burning. Another letter found in Ugarit's ruins, written by Ugarit's own king, says enemy ships have set fire to his cities. He has no soldiers. His infantry is in Hittite territory. His fleet is in Lycia. He asks for 10,000 soldiers. The letter was never sent. It was found in the kiln, still being baked when the city fell. Here is the question experts genuinely cannot answer. Every theory explains some collapses. No theory explains all of them. The Indus Valley cities, already in decline, disappeared in this same window. So did several Bronze Age cultures in China. The collapse was not Eastern Mediterranean. It was planetary. Why did it hit everywhere at once? The most disturbing implication is this. We have never found a Bronze Age civilization that saw it coming. Not one. The Ugarit letters show they were sending for help hours before the end. The linear B tablets show palace administrators still counting sheep the season before collapse. Advanced, literate, well-organized societies can vanish without warning. So, who taught the sea peoples to fight like that? The answer the evidence points to is grimly simple. No one did. They were already soldiers. They were the remnants of the Bronze Age militaries themselves. Mycenaean, Hittite, Cypriot warriors whose cities had just burned. They fought like Bronze Age armies because they were Bronze Age armies. In 1200 BC, a scribe in Ugarit was halfway through a letter begging for help. He never finished it. The city burned. That letter still exists. And now you know what it really means. It was not a cry for help from a civilization under attack. It was a civilization writing its own epitaph in a world that had already